Okay, imagine this for a second. It's your 29th birthday.
Hmm.
You're already dealing with that, that specific creeping dread that happens right before you turn 30. You go to your mailbox, you're expecting maybe a birthday card, or, let's be honest, probably just a bill.
Right.
But instead, you find this official-looking government envelope. And you open it, and it's not about taxes or voting. It's a letter asking you to think very seriously about your biological clock.
That is definitely one way to kill the birthday vibe. But for millions of young people in France, this isn't some hypothetical. It's a very real government policy that's, well, rolling out as we speak.
And that is exactly what we're diving into today. We're looking at the French baby bust and the government's really controversial and, frankly, fascinating plan to try and fix it.
Yeah.
But this goes way beyond just a letter. We've got a whole stack of reports here from the French Ministry of Health, new data from INSEE, which is their National Statistics Institute, and some pretty intense social media backlash.
Exactly, because what we're really looking at here is a superpower facing, you could almost say, an existential crisis. This is about demographic rearmament, a phrase we're definitely going to have to unpack.
Oh, yeah.
And a whole generation of young people basically telling their government, don't send us letters, send us cash.
It's that classic conflict, right? Biology versus economics, with the state caught right in the middle.
So let's start with the panic.
Yep.
Why is the French government suddenly sliding into everyone's mailboxes to talk about fertility?
To really get the why, you have to look at the numbers. And the numbers are, they're historic. Just a few weeks ago, INSEE dropped a bombshell report.
Okay.
They revealed that 2025 was this definitive turning point. For the first time since the Second World War, France's natural population growth actually went negative.
Negative. So just to be clear, that means more deaths than births.
More coffins than cradles.
Yeah.
Exactly. The specific numbers were 651,000 deaths compared to only 645,000 births.
Wow. That feels like a huge psychological shift. I mean, France has always been the big outlier in Europe, hasn't it? Absolutely.
While, Germany and Italy were seeing their population shrink, France was always the fertility champion. They were the ones keeping the European average from totally cratering.
Precisely. And that's why this is such a shock to their system. You have to remember, France is the second largest economy in the EU, 7th in the world. A huge part of their national identity, their grandeur, is tied directly to their size and strength.
Grandeur, right? This idea of France as a global heavyweight.
And in the eyes of the French state, a shrinking population is a direct threat to that standing. I mean, if you don't have the people, you don't have the workers, you don't have the tax base to support an aging population.
And you lose your influence on the world stage.
You lose geopolitical influence.
Yeah.
That is why seeing the fertility rate drop to an average of 1.56 children per woman is ringing every alarm bell in the Élysée Palace.
And just for context, 1.56 is way below the replacement rate, which is what, like 2.1?
Yeah, 2.1 is the number you need to keep a population stable without immigration.
So without it, the country just slowly fades away.
Correct. And this explains the kind of rhetoric we're seeing. Looking at the sources, President Emmanuel Macron didn't just, politely ask people to consider having kids. The language he used in 2024 was incredibly martial. He called for demographic rearmament.
Rearmament. That is such a loaded term. It sounds like you're preparing for a war, not a baby shower. It feels very, 19th century.
Oh, for sure.
Like, produce more citizens for the glory of the Republic.
The choice of words is absolutely deliberate. It's meant to frame the birth rate not as a personal choice, but as a matter of national security. Macron literally said, "Our France will also be stronger thanks to the rebound in the birth rate." He warned that France's strength used to be its population growth, and then he said, this is no longer the case.
It's fascinating connecting the nursery directly to the battlefield, at least metaphorically. Okay, so the government is panicked. They need more citizens. And their first big move is this letter. Let's get into what this 29th birthday present actually says. Is it just a brochure with a stork on it?
No. It's a bit more clinical than that, thankfully. It's essentially a personalized information packet, all about sexual health, contraception, and, of course, fertility. Think of it as a little fertility checkup nudge from the state.
And looking at the details from the Ministry of Health, they seem to be trying to walk a really fine line here. It says the letter makes it clear that things like IVF and egg freezing are options, but it also explicitly warns they are not miracle cures.
And that's a really important nuance. There's a lot of, misinformation out there. A lot of people think IVF is this guaranteed backup plan. And the data just doesn't support that. It's often a very long, very difficult and uncertain process. So they're trying to manage expectations.
I was also surprised by the focus on equality in the letter. They're
Yeah.
very clear this isn't just for women.
Right. The message is that fertility is a shared responsibility. Usually this whole biological clock conversation is aimed squarely at women.
Totally.
But this campaign is actively saying, hey guys, you have a biological clock too.
Which is, I mean, it's scientifically true. We just talk about it less. Sperm quality declines with age. The risks go up. It's not a one-sided thing.
Exactly. The government statement even said that while the clocks aren't the same, men definitely have them. They're trying to destigmatize the whole conversation for men, which is honestly a pretty big step forward for public health messaging.
Okay, I have to ask the most obvious question, though. Why 29? Why not 25 or 30? Is there something magical about your 29th birthday in France?
There is, actually. But it's a legal magic, not a biological one. It all connects back to the bioethics law that was passed in 2021.
Oh, okay.
In France, 29 is the age where women can legally freeze their eggs without needing a specific medical justification.
Oh, I see. So before 29, you can only do it if you have something like cancer that might threaten your fertility.
Correct. You generally need a clear medical reason. But after 29, it becomes a choice you can make for what they call social reasons. You know, focusing on a career, not having found the right partner. So the letter is timed to land right when that option becomes legally available to you.
It's actionable advice then. Happy birthday! You can now legally freeze your eggs.
Pretty much. And, to be fair, the government isn't just sending letters. They are actually trying to build the infrastructure to back this up.
Because if you tell everyone to go freeze their eggs,
You better have clinics ready to do it. Right now, there are about 40 egg freezing centers in France. The plan is to get that number up to 70 in the next 2 years.
and the wait times are famously long right now, right? I've seen reports of women waiting for years.
They're massive. And if you're trying to freeze your eggs, time is literally everything. Waiting 2 years can make a huge difference in egg quality. The government knows they have a serious bottleneck,
They're also pouring money into research for endometriosis and PCOS.
which is huge.
It really is. I mean, these are conditions that affect so many women, like 1 in 10 for endo, and they're huge barriers to pregnancy. But for decades, they've just been dismissed as, bad periods.
Absolutely. And when you think about the fact that 1 in 8 couples in France struggles to conceive, that's over 3 million people, it makes sense to tackle the medical side of it.
Right.
If you have people who want children but physically can't have them, helping them is kind of the low-hanging fruit of demographic policy.
Right. So you have this logical on-paper campaign of medical support and information. We need more babies, so let's help people have them.
Yeah.
But then you see the reaction from the actual 29-year-olds getting this news, and it is not what you'd call a standing ovation.
No, it is not.
Yeah.
And this is where the whole demographic rearmament plan runs headfirst into the wall of economic reality.
The backlash online has been pretty savage. I think my favorite viral sentiment was something like, it's not a letter that should be sent, but a bank transfer.
It's a great line, but it really cuts to the heart of the issue. The demography experts who've analyzed this all say the same thing. This birth dearth isn't just about biology. It's overwhelmingly economic.
It's a cost of living.
It's the high cost of living, it's housing shortages, it's job insecurity.
Yeah.
If you're 29 in France today, you're facing the same pressures as young people all over Europe. You're probably struggling to find a stable, affordable apartment. You might be on a short-term contract instead of a permanent one.
And in France, that CDI, the permanent contract, is everything, right? You need it to get a loan, to get an apartment. It's not just a job. It's a key to adult life.
It is essential.
Mhm.
And without that stability, that fear of the future, it acts as a massive contraceptive. You're not going to have a kid if you're worried you could be unemployed or evicted in 6 months.
It's tough to plan for a nursery when you can't even plan for next year's rent. And this is where that huge contradiction comes in that critics are pointing to. The government is saying, have more babies for France, while simultaneously slashing the budget.
The austerity contradiction.
Yeah. Just this month, Prime Minister Sébastien Lecornu pushed through a really controversial budget bill. The main goal was slashing the public deficit. We're talking about 9 billion euros in cuts.
9 billion. That is not a small number. Where are those cuts coming from?
Well, it's probably easier to say where they aren't coming from. The cuts affect nearly every ministry except for Interior, Justice, and the Army.
Wait, so the literal army gets its budget protected, but the demographic army gets budget cuts.
That is exactly how it's being perceived. When you cut funding to those other ministries, you're hitting the social safety net, education, public services, daycares, the very things families rely on.
So you have the government asking people to take on this huge financial burden of raising the next generation while also pulling back on the public support that makes it even possible.
It sends a really mixed message. We need you to reproduce, but by the way, you're on your own paying for it.
So how is the government defending this? They must be hearing the send us cash complaints. They are. The health minister, Stephanie Rist, has been making the rounds. Her argument is that the state isn't trying to interfere in private lives or force anyone's hands. She says the goal is to open up possibilities.
Open up possibilities.
Right. She framed it as trying to prevent future regret. She said, "What we must avoid is continuing to hear, if only I had known." The idea is the government's job is just to make sure you have the information and the medical access.
So if you do want kids, biology won't be what stops you.
That's their argument. They're saying that behind these private, intimate matters, there are collective public policy decisions that have to be made.
So their position is, we're clearing the biological hurdles for you. The economic hurdles are a different conversation.
Exactly. But for the young person getting that letter, those two things, biology and the economy, are completely linked. You can't freeze your eggs if you can't afford the storage fees, and you can't raise a kid if you can't afford childcare.
Now, speaking of the medical side, there's another statistic in these sources that's much, much darker, and frankly, I was shocked I hadn't heard more about it. We've been talking about babies not being born, but there's a serious problem with babies dying.
Yes. This is the silent alarm that often gets lost in the fertility rate debate. While everyone is focused on the birth rate, France is quietly dealing with a really significant infant mortality crisis.
When I think of France, a G7 nation, world-class healthcare, I just don't think high infant mortality. But the data says they rank, 23rd out of 27 EU countries?
It's a shocking statistic. They're ranked down there between Poland and Bulgaria. The rate is 4.1 deaths for every 1,000 births.
4.1.
To put that in perspective, that means 1 in every 250 children born in France dies before their first birthday.
1 in 250. That's incredibly high for a developed country. I saw it. There's a book about it called 4.1. They call it a silent phenomenon. Why is this happening?
It's a really complex mix of demographic shifts and systemic failures. On the demographic side, you have mothers being older, which naturally carries higher risks. You have lifestyle factors like obesity, smoking rates during pregnancy. Yeah. But the sources point to a structural cause that is maybe more damning.
Which is?
The closure of maternity centers.
This goes right back to the budget cuts we were just talking about.
Exactly. For decades, France has been closing smaller, local maternity wards to consolidate costs and centralize services.
Creating medical deserts.
Yes. So if your local center closes, a pregnant woman might have to travel 45 minutes, an hour, sometimes more, just to give birth.
And in an emergency, a complication, a hemorrhage, that extra travel time can be the difference between life and death.
Right. And it also means the hospitals that are left are overcrowded. The authors of that book, 4.1, they attribute these deaths directly to this strained system, overworked staff, lack of resources, and those long, risky transfers. It's not just biology. It's the result of dismantling the healthcare network.
So the government is frantically trying to convince people to have more babies with these letters, while the very system needed to keep those babies alive is crumbling under austerity.
It's a tragic irony. The executive has announced they're creating a new registry to track the exact causes of these deaths, to look at the socioeconomic factors. So they know it's a problem. But, identifying the problem and fixing the root causes, like reopening clinics and hiring more staff, are two very different things.
So if we try to zoom out and pull this all together, it really feels like France is fighting a war on two fronts.
They absolutely are. On one front, you have this psychological and economic battle. They're trying to convince young people that having children is a viable, safe choice in a deeply uncertain world.
Trying to reverse a cultural trend with letters and information.
And on the other front, they are fighting a logistical medical battle just to keep their healthcare system intact enough to safely deliver and care for the kids who are being born. And they're trying to do both of these things while simultaneously slashing the national budget.
It's an impossible tightrope walk, and it just raises this huge question about what a government can actually do about something like this. Can a policy, any policy, really reverse a demographic winter?
That is the big question for the 21st century, and it's not just for France. South Korea, Japan, Italy, they're all watching this experiment. We're seeing the absolute limits of state intervention. You can send letters, you can fund egg freezing, you can use warlike rhetoric. But the decision to have a child is the most personal, intimate, and economically terrifying decision a person can make.
And if people feel like the ground underneath them is shaky economically or socially, no amount of patriotic duty is going to change their mind.
Exactly. If the state truly wants demographic rearmament, it's going to have to provide a lot more than just biological support. It's going to have to provide the kind of economic security that makes the future look like a place you'd actually want to raise a family in.
It's fascinating. We started this by imagining you opening that letter on your 29th birthday. And I want to leave our listeners with this thought. If you got a letter from your government tomorrow asking you to consider your fertility for the good of the nation, how would that land with you? Would it feel like a helping hand, like support, or would it feel like surveillance, like the state is trying to peek into your bedroom?
And does a term like demographic rearmament imply that we are just citizens with agency? Or are we just producing the next generation of soldiers and taxpayers for the state? It's a fundamental question about where you draw the line between the national interest and your own personal autonomy.
A heavy question, but definitely one worth thinking about. That's all for this deep dive into the French baby bust. Thanks for listening.
Until next time.